What's up, everybody? It's me, Joe White Rostick of What Do You Believe, coming at you live. It's take 3 of me trying to get this live set up, so I'm just going to hop right in what I'm doing today. If you care, share it. Let people know we're here to discuss it. I don't do online debates, chat debates. I would rather shave my head with a cheese grater. This is an online platform where you get to chat what you believe after I share what I believe, and then we can leave it at that. If you want to have more for future discussions and all that, find channels like Trinity Radio Broadcasting, Trinity Radio, William Lane Craig, Jay Dyer, other people like that, Modern Day Debate. But this is just meant to be a hangout time. So at the end, if you do want to come on, let me know. I can get you the link. And then here's the intro to the song. Here's the intro to the show that I messed up on before. Hopefully everything is working good. Let's go. What do you believe?
Never lacking, slacking, overreacting when I be coming with my reaction. What do you believe?
What do you believe? Never lacking, slacking, overreacting, always reacting. What do you believe? Let's go. So I'm going to be reacting today. Thank you, Steve, for chiming in. I know you've been with me for like every time here. So we're going to get into this discussion. This is between Richard Dawkins, who is like known as one of the main atheists of our time, reacting and hearing for the first time in person, I believe, his colleague's testimony and how she came to Christianity. And what's so amazing about this is she went from being a Muslim to an atheist, running with Dawkins and them, and has now come to Christianity. And she's going to be sharing with Dawkins, like, this is not what you think. It's not as corny as you think. It really works. Christianity is real, and it's not like Islam, because that's what a lot of atheists and people like to say, is it's just like every other religion. Christianity and all these other people, they all just have their myths. And atheists say, I believe in just one less God than you do. You don't believe in the God of Muslims, Allah. You don't believe in the gods of Hinduism. So I just go one step further and don't believe in the God of Christianity. But this sister here is going to have a great take on this, because she came from another religion and then went to atheism and then now is experiencing Christianity. And I got to give props to her, because imagine how intimidating it would be to have a discussion after being a new Christian. I don't even know if she's been a Christian for a year, to have a discussion with the number one. I would believe he's the number one atheist on the planet right now, Richard Dawkins, and yet God uses her, blesses her. It's a great discussion. I've watched it in its entirety, but today what I'm going to do is just be playing through certain parts, and maybe even as a bonus, if anybody sticks around and thinks that I should, I don't know if anybody cares, but I might also look at another famous conversion to Christianity. Okay, so let's take a look at this right here. And let me just say this too, which I think is really cool. You always got these deconstructing Christians coming out of Christianity, and watch what they have to say as in comparison to what people coming into Christianity have to say. To me, you can see that those who are deconstructing 9 times out of 10 are doing it for the wrong reasons. Like, in other words, they want Christianity to be free from any flaws. They don't want there to be any questions left unanswered. And they feel like if it's not proven to them in some type of a naturalistic way, then it can't be real, like in the belief system of naturalism and so forth. And yet when you hear somebody come from naturalism, come from that background, like Ali, a very smart, intelligent woman, talk about how she experienced God, and now she's investigating the truth claims, she's seeing that there's more than enough evidence to bring her past the 50%. I don't know how much certainty you need to have to believe something, but let's just say it needs to be over 50%. I oftentimes, when I listen to these deconstructing stories, they're talking like they want 100%, or they're just going to, say, well, nobody can know, or they're going to raise up their skepticism so high where it becomes almost impossible to convince them. Where the Bible gives a simple challenge to seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened, and ask and you shall receive. And the Bible talks about reaching out to God in that kind of way. And I know for myself, when I came to Christianity, it was after I had left Christianity and been a sinner, backsliding, as we say, doing drugs and all these wild things. And when I came back, I had all of these questions too, these things that I couldn't necessarily have certainty over. But my mother encouraged me to encounter God, and I did, and I got off drugs in that day. I've never gone back to drugs. I've never gotten drunk past it. Like, things just changed radically. The kind of despair that I had went away. So if I was looking for like some type of a certainty over every truth claim of the Bible, like, who was Cain's wife, or how do you reconcile the differences in the narratives of the four gospels and harmonization and so forth, like I would have missed what God had for me. And I noticed this, and I don't say this to be a general statement that covers every and all. I just mean in a general statement of what would be anecdotally, my experience with people, and even listening online, that those who deconvert generally don't have healthy marriages and healthy relationships in romantic senses for long periods of time. And the reason why I say that is because so often the people that I see, they go through hardships in life, they go through strained relationships, and then in their Christianity, they project that onto God. And they don't understand that God is not like these strained relationships and so forth. God is there to stick with us and be by our side. And he's truly the lover of our soul. And I know that sounds a little like gushy, a little mushy, whatever. But honestly, I see it. Like some of the people, even in my own life, who I see struggle with their faith, also struggle in their marriage. They struggle in those kind of relationships, or as one of the things was like they lack relationship with a good father figure. That's oftentimes true. Sometimes people in the atheist community think we are longing for a relationship with our Father, so we try to find it in God. But the opposite can be said of them, because they didn't have a good relationship with their Father, that they're lacking in understanding what God is like. Well, if I was to explain to a person that's been married 3 times, I just met one of these guys when I was at my gym in the hot tub there. If I was to explain to him how I've been married for almost 20 years to one woman, he is not going to understand by facts and data. The only way I can get him to understand is in the heart. Like, I can compare my life to his life in facts and data. Like, when my wife and I get in a fight or get upset with each other, we calm down. We take, a break from each other. We come back. We talk it through by using listening skills, making sure we can repeat back to the other person. Like I could, what they had said, I could say all of that and say, these are the facts. And then he could tell me, well, maybe I didn't do that, or I tried and it didn't work, right? Like, we can go back and forth on that. But that's not going to change the fact that I've experienced something. Everybody listen to me. That I've experienced something that he has not experienced. And that is the love of another person committed to me for 20 years. And so, we use this as a one-liner, but there's truth behind it. The person with an experience is never at the mercy of a person with an argument. And I know that sounds like we're anti-scientific and stuff, and we're not, because Christians develop the scientific method. Just read Tom Holland's book, Dominion, and you'll see what we have done with knowledge and what is knowable in the natural world and so forth. But not everything is confined in what we would call naturalism, in our senses and sense data. There are things like love, and that's the closest thing I can explain it as, is how I love God and have a relationship with God. It's like how I have it with my wife and how it's been so fruitful over these years. And someone else may be like, well, I like being single, or I like going from woman to woman, and I doubt that's even true. But let's just say they like it, and they want me to believe that. Yeah, but you know what? You are missing something that I can tell you for sure I have that you don't have. And there's no way I can explain that to you other than just telling you like I did. You don't have the kind of love and commitment and that kind of a security that I have. And I can even say back to them, I know what you've had, because I have had many women, because I have wild out and been crazy. So, and I know Christian, deconstructed Christians will say back, well, I was once a Christian. I know what you have. Now I have what you, but you see, I even can come back at them and say, I was a Christian, backslid and came back. So I mean, it's like, what flavor of dog puke do you like that you don't think I tried? As the Bible says, as a dog returns to its vomit, so a sinner goes back to their sin. Like, excuse me, what type of dog vomit did you get that you think I didn't have? I had sex, you get to have sex. I got to think whatever I wanted to think, be free-minded or whatever, no restrictions, and how I would view the world. You get to do that. Okay, whatever, man. You got away from your fear of hell. I didn't even think about hell, man. I was out doing whatever I was doing. So I believe that Christianity, unlike any other religion, has an experiential component that is so key to it that it's not merely head knowledge, it's heart knowledge. And so let's hear Ali share how she came to this, because I went all into this little rant here to explain, like, she's dealing with the most educated atheists of our time, which, by the way, philosophers who read his book, The God Delusion, said he needs to put a dunce hat on and go sit in the corner and stay with the lab, man. Because once these, scientists oftentimes take off the lab coat and go into philosophy, they embarrass themselves. And I could show you atheistic philosophers who said that about Dawkins and his philosophy. But you can see him coming out here. I don't want to say he's all smug, but he's happy. He's coming out here. He's ready to do his thing. And he's going to challenge her. But once again, listen to the boldness and the heart and the love that Ayaan shares with him. Let's get into it.
And just behind that curtain, I hope, is none other than Ayaan. Welcome, Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Great to see you, Ayaan. Welcome.
Thank you.
I think we have to start with the extraordinary few months you've just had. For those people who haven't been following up, just tell us the story, how such a famous atheist, someone who had rejected religion, came to call herself a Christian.
Oh. So I want to say that I didn't, like many people who come to faith, I didn't see big banging lights, and I didn't have any of those spectacular experiences that some people share. I wish I did, but I didn't. I had a personal crisis. I lived for about a decade with intense depression and anxiety, self-loathing. I hit rock bottom. I went to a place where I actually didn't want to live anymore, but wasn't brave enough to take my own life. And so I was self-medicating. I had, over a long period of time, seen psychiatrists, other doctors. I was trying to understand my condition and trying to treat it with the help of pure evidence-based science. And in January, February of last year, I saw one therapist who said, perhaps it's something else that you have, and she described it as spiritual bankruptcy. And that resonated with me, and having reached a place where I had absolutely nothing to lose, I prayed, and I prayed it desperately. And for me, that was a turning point. And what happened after that is a miracle in its own right. I feel connected to something higher and greater than myself. I feel my zest for life is back. And that.
You can sell this $5 spatula on Amazon and compete with hundreds of other spatula sellers.
Okay,
or
let me pass this
you
commercial.
Can sell.
Okay, so they basically put that commercial right into the break there, and I'm going to start it back up here in just a moment between her sharing the testimony and then getting Dawkins' reaction. And so what I want us to do is just think about what we just heard, right? Like she said, I went to evidence-based therapy, and that kind of treatment for the depression that I was facing, and it didn't work. Now, anywhere in here, did she say that evidence-based therapy doesn't work for all people at all time? No, she's not saying that. I'm sure that it works for many people many of the times. And I thank God for mental health doctors. I'm not Tom Cruise. I'm not a Scientologist, thank God, okay? We believe as Christians that all truth comes from God. All good things come from God. Notice what she's saying, though, is that wasn't reaching the part of where she was really hurting, where she was really living in herself. Now, right here, you're going to get to people like I've mentioned before, and I got the book, and I can pull it up here at any time, Alex Rosenberg in the Atheist Guide to Reality. You're going to have atheists trying to say, you're not even a person. So why are you even worrying about, esoteric angst or, your the meaning of life and all of these things, existential angst rather. Why are you even worrying about that? You're not even a person. And a matter of fact, I will pull that up so you can see it from Dr. Alex Rosenberg, so you don't think that I'm making this up. Dr. Alex Rosenberg says at the end of his book, The Atheist Guide to Reality, that the great deception that people believe is that they're people and that there's really no I on the inside of you. So he writes this book that's supposed to get you to live your life without any illusions. And what he says at the end of the book is the greatest illusion is your very life, your very personhood. Now tell me that's not one of the most goofiest things you've ever heard, because then when you look at the book, how often does he use the word I? Now let me just show you this, okay? Now I'm just going to give this to everybody. You can see it. The Atheist Guide to Reality, Enjoying Life Without Illusions. Okay, I'm not making this up. Okay. Now notice what he says here. He's going to give basically like his 10 commandments by answering like 10 questions or so here. And he's basically telling the atheists, y'all act too much like Christians. You still don't understand really what you have bought into when you deny God. It's not just now you don't go to church and you don't have to worry about hell. You've actually given up all illusions that God and God type belief gave you. So what are some of those illusions going to be? Well, let's go. Is there no God? Is there a God? No. What is reality? What physics says it is. Now, remember, physics is not a word on Sesame Street. It's not talking and saying nothing. People who study physics can say something, but here he's already contradicting himself. The nature of reality doesn't come from science walking around as SCIENCE and now having a conversation with you like dancing words on Sesame Street. So if you just denied there's no God, why is anything talking to you and giving any order and description of the universe? But let's just go on with what he's saying here. What is the purpose of the universe? There is none. So now if you are not a Christian, according to him, a theist rather, you're not even able to say there's a purpose to the universe. Is there a meaning of life? Ditto. There is none. So, you see how he's breaking down these atheistic kind of thoughts that they borrow from Christians. Why am I here? Just dumb luck. Does prayer work? Of course not. Is there a soul? Is immortal? Are you kidding? Is there free will? Not a chance. So think about the contradiction of that. If there's no free will, then he had no choice but to write this book and be the kind of person he is. And I have no choice but to be the kind of person I am. So why are you even trying to change my mind by writing a book that's supposed to change my mind? I'm going to only do what my nature and my chemicals allow me or make me to do, right? What happens after we die? Everything goes on pretty much as it did before us. What is the difference between right and wrong, good and bad? There is no moral difference between them. So now notice that whenever we hear from Richard Dawkins bringing up anything about morality and Christianity and so forth, Alex Rosenberg is going to say to him, dude, what are you talking about? There's no such thing as good and bad and wrong. Why are you even using that? And then says, why should I be moral? Because it makes you feel better than being immoral. But that's a contradiction as well. Some people feel better being immoral. What do you say to the psychotic person? What do you say to the person who just loves doing some immorality? Maybe they're not a murderer or a rapist and so forth, but just every now and then they like diddling with children or something crazy. Just every now and then they like to, steal from old people. Just every now and then, and it makes them feel good. What are you going to say then? There is nothing, according to Alex Rosenberg, and what I would consider true atheism that you can even say. Now he says it's abortion, euthanasia, suicide, paying taxes. Now notice he kind of plays it easy with these examples, but he should be saying here, child molesting. Is there anything wrong with rape? Is there anything wrong with genocide? But he just kind of picks like these kind of like basic things. And then he goes, or anything else forbidden, permissible, or sometimes obligatory, which I said here, he should have been naming those things that we would all feel a gut check towards. He says anything goes. Okay, now don't take my word for it. You go ahead and take his word for it, okay? He's clear about what he believes. Now notice what I said about the person, okay? Because what Ali is going to mention here at the end of her discussion is that that I tried evidence-based therapy and it didn't work for me. I tried these various things and it didn't work. And what is Dawkins going to start saying to her? Well, maybe you could have tried this or tried that, whatever. But you know what? According to Alex Rosenberg, there wasn't even an I inside of her. And look at what he says, the advice he would give her. In other words, this is what Dawkins really should have been saying if he wanted to be a real atheist. That I think Alex Rosenberg brings up real atheism. And look at this. The self, the person, the I inside the body is an illusion. So on top of all these other things that are illusions, morality, right and wrong, purpose and meaning, all that's an illusion. Guess what? The I inside of you is an illusion. And what this means is that you can get out of Epicurus's argument, which I don't have time to get into. This is why we should fear death and so forth. And then how does he end his book? This is the last sentence of the book right here. You see, now it goes here to the backstory. This is the last sentence. If you still can't sleep at night, so Ali, you still have all of these problems. You can't sleep at night. You want to be honest? After I've given you all of science's answers, and remember I told you that's a contradiction because science doesn't say nothing. It's not a talking word on Sesame Street. You should probably just do one more thing beside having Epicurean detachment. Take some Prozac or your favorite serotonin reputate inhibitor and keep taking them till they kick in. Now, you think that's crazy, but that's the honest truth. That's the honest truth. Blessings to you all. Yes, this is 100% nonsense. Absolutely nonsense. Absolute nonsense. And yet these are the wisest people among us, according to the world. So now, brothers and sisters, especially those who are Christians, listening, right? And I know I'm not just preaching to the choir, so I'm glad you're here wherever you believe. And I'll take you up, and I'm going to leave time to take up anybody online, okay? Just remember, I'd rather shave my head with the cheese grater than go on and on and on, okay? So I'm telling you that right now. If anybody comes up and says, he didn't want to debate me for 4 hours, I'm telling you right now, not only would I rather do a million other things than debate somebody for 4 hours, I can do other things that I enjoy than debate you for 4 hours, because that's not what I do. There's other channels that do that. Call in Jay Dyer's channel. Call in Trinity Radio channel. Call in those other channels and go on Modern Day Debate. I'm just saying that right now. So I'm going to let you come up if you want to talk, but I'm not going on and on and on. That's not what I do. That's not what I don't even care enough to do that. I care about people I see face to face when I meet them on the streets, and I communicate the gospel. I preach the gospel like that all the times. And I care enough to hear what you have to say here. And then we're going to end it at that. I just want to say that because sometimes people are like, he didn't want to talk on and on and on, man, because I don't want to. Go find somebody else to talk on and on and on with. I'm telling you what I believe. Now I just want to know what you believe. That's it. It's not that I don't care what you believe. I'm just telling you, I don't need to keep debating about you or with you what you believe. I believe the Holy Spirit can change your heart in 30 seconds more than I can in a 3-hour discussion. And I thank God for those who do 3-hour discussions, because that does help some hard-headed people. But just notice this. As we get into this with Dawkins now responding, and I love what my dude just said right here. Yeah, they always love putting that commercial at the pivotal point. Now, as we get into this response by him, keep in the back of your mind what he really should be saying from the heart of what he believes. What he really should be saying is, Ali, man, if you would have killed yourself, it wouldn't even matter. And why do you even care if you kill yourself or not? You're just but dust. And you know what, Ali? When you were going to get those evidence-based therapy and that help, and it didn't work, you know what you should have did? You should have just taken more until it knocked you out and made you numb, and just go on about reproducing, have some babies, because that's what you need to do. You need to be here to reproduce, because that's what Dawkins said was the meaning of life, was simply for organisms to reproduce, if there was such a purpose, right? But let's see his response. He's going to try to weasel in different thoughts and different ideas that come from what we would say, not just generic theism, but also from Christianity, virtues, and how you can look at life his way and find more joy in life this way. Maybe she didn't do atheism right, and she could have done that way. But atheism doesn't have any purpose to give you. Atheism doesn't have any value to give you. Science doesn't have anything to make your pain go away when it's down deep in your soul. Okay, so let's go back to him now.
And that experience has filled me with humility, I have to say. And it is something that's very subjective. It's extremely difficult to explain. I'm trying to get into the details, the granular details of how I got there in a book, but that is a short, that's the shortest story that I can tell.
Let's go to Richard Dawkins' reaction, because
that's a moving personal story, but to call yourself a Christian is a bit different. I mean, a Christian has to believe in something. And you go to church now, and you listen to the vicar, and do you kind of notice what a lot of nonsense he talks? I mean, do you really take it seriously that Jesus is the Son of God, Jesus rose from the dead, Jesus was born of a virgin, and that's part of Christianity?
I don't know how much you guys will like me interrupted, but I got to interrupt right here. Do you notice how much nonsense the vicar talks? Dude's got the strand of DNA, got DNA, the helix, whatever, they're on his tie. You want to hear nonsense? That thing came from the goo to the zoo to you. That's nonsense. Believing in a virgin birth where God creates the universe out of nothing into something, that's easy. How is that hard to understand? The same God that turned on the video game, the matrix we call life, can circumvent the rules that he put in place whenever he wants. Man, you're telling me I can't make a video game right now, have a baby, have a virgin, a character, have a baby without having sex? I can do that in my own video game. I can make a character in a video game right now walk on water. You're telling me the God who made this can't do that? You think that's ridiculous? Now, I'm not saying we should just believe any old myth that comes down our way, but the Bible has actual historicity behind it. It has actual people. It's not just like the myths of the Greeks and the Romans and so forth. And yet he's just going to just try to brush this off and say this is nonsense. No, man, we think the goo through the zoo to you is nonsense. We think the very fact that you know you couldn't be here unless you were designed. You couldn't sit in that chair unless it was designed. And now you're going to deny a designer. We think that's nonsense. But I love how this sister, this precious sister, is not intimidated by that. Because what he's going to be asking for, and John Lennox talks about this, the Oxford mathematician, I did a reaction with him debating an atheist before, you can look at that. What he's going to be asking for is a scientific explanation. But not all explanations need science or can even have science. It's like using a metal detector to try to find a diamond. You're not going to find it because a diamond's not metal, but it's even more precious than metal. He's going to try to use science as a way to evaluate what she just said was a matter of her heart and her soul, when science itself comes from hearts and souls. Science itself cannot explain why you do science and why there is the laws of nature and all of that. These are things science discovers and uses with the aid of the soul and the mind and so forth. But let's listen to how she does it.
Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus rose from the dead. Jesus was born of a virgin, and that's part of Christianity.
So I think because you, and I know you very well, we've been friends for a long time. In fact, in some ways, I think of you as a mentor. I would say you're coming at this from a place of there is nothing. And what has happened to me is I think I have accepted there is something. And when you accept that there is something, there is a powerful entity. For me, the God that turned me around, I think what the vicar is saying no longer sounds nonsensical. It makes a great deal of sense. And not only does it make a great deal of sense, it's also layered with the wisdom of millennia. And so, like you, I did mock faith in general, and probably Christianity in particular, but I don't do that anymore. And again, that is where the humility comes into it, is it doesn't seem, in 2024, after I went through that experience, it doesn't seem nonsensical to me, and I don't mock it. I think I've come down to my knees to say, perhaps those people who've always had faith have something that we who lost faith don't have. And people who have faith also, like the woman who told me, well, you've tried everything and you've lost hope, you've lost faith. Try it, pray. I think just in that one word, there is so much wisdom and that it's, I am stuttering and I'm staggering to say, I'm just trying to say, no, it's not stupid. It's in fact, it's clever and it's wise.
Wow. Come on, somebody. Give her the snaps. I was giving her the Pentecostal hand wave right there. Boom, shakalaka. Yeah. That's what's up. That's it. See, he's trying to use his metal detector to go find a diamond. And she's saying, man, look, I got a diamond and I'm trying to explain to you how I got it. I didn't get it from the metal detector. I understand that's how you find things, and things that you consider are valuable, you consider finding them with that metal detector. I get it. That's what she's saying. Like, I get that's what you do. But I found it. Here's the proof. I got it. I'm no longer depressed. I'm no longer anxious. I no longer want to kill myself. So I got this thing, and I'm trying to tell you I did not find it the way you look for things. You've got to look for this in a different way, with a different method. And that's why I am presuppositional in my apologetic approach. And let me just unpack that real quick. What it means to be presuppositional is that I believe everybody comes to discussions with presuppositions, things they already believe. And then from that foundation, they make arguments to either strike down things that they don't believe are right or to accept things that they believe are right. So everything comes from the foundation of what they have laid as what we call the presuppositions, what they believe to be true. And these kinds of things can be like God exists, the self exists, the external world exists, these kind of presuppositions. Well, as you see with Dr. Alex Rosenberg, as I introduced him into this subject here, into this video in his book, he wants to remove all of those foundations and then continue on as if physics and science can say something. And that's exactly what Richard Dawkins wants to do. He wants to now presuppose there is no God, but at the same time of presupposing there's no God and that faith is stupid and Christianity is dumb, he also wants to believe in causation. He also wants to believe in the normality of the universe and the regularity of these laws. He also wants to believe in logic and understanding things through philosophical principles like the law of identity and non-contradiction, an excluded middle, and so forth. And so what our sister is saying here is so precious. She's like, once I accepted, notice what she said, once I accepted that there was something rather than nothing, it all came into line. And then when she said now Christianity specifically, which I'll get into here in a little bit, it's just different. It's different. It's not, I got books back here, folks. I got them. I'll stroll back here to let you know I'm not making it up. I have neighbors too. I have friends. I go out in the real world. Here's basically, and let me get my Buddhist one right here from my friend. My Buddhist neighbor gave it to me. Where's his book here he gave? Here we go. All right, here we go. So, the major understandings that now you're going to have once you get to theism, there's something rather than nothing. You're going to get to like Vispanana, which is a form of Buddhism meditation. Okay. You're going to get to something like that in Eastern philosophy. You're going to go towards what I'll just say is basic paganism and polytheism, which Hinduism is like Greek mythology and so forth, like Indo-European ways of looking at things, just multiple gods, multiple stories within those gods, almost like soap operas are going on. Or the other major monotheistic religion, Islam. And here's the Quran. So I got the Quran, got the Bhagavad Gita. These are the two other biggest religions per se that compete with Christianity. And depending on how you view Buddhism, some say it's not a religion, it's just a way of living or so forth. There's your options. Now, what is, and let me just pull out the Bible. Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah. Let me pull out the Bible right here. Now, what is going to be the difference? Christianity, let's just go here real quick. I'm going to just talk a little bit here. What's Christianity going to do? Christianity, in difference to Hinduism, and I have lots of Hindu neighbors and I love them with the love of Christ, Christianity is going to base its stories on historical narratives. So when you talk to people who say, well, just because Christianity got Jerusalem right, that doesn't mean it gets all its supernatural stuff right. That's like Spider-Man saying New York exists, but then asking you now to believe in everything Spider-Man does. No, it's not the same. Christianity is not just merely telling you about people and places and actual times and dates and so forth. It's actually trying its best, as I believe God is inspired it. It's communicating the best possible way that the miracles are not to be taken metaphorically, that the events that it's portraying to you is biographical, historical narrative, and that the people who are seeing these things oftentimes doubt, oftentimes get it wrong. They then have a heart change. They then experience it themselves. And even the enemies, those who don't believe it, also see it, also verify that powerful things are happening, but they're coming up with different explanations. And so anybody, and by the way, I've been to India 3 times by God's grace, anybody that thinks these two ways of telling stories and giving out information is the same has not read them or been around their teachers and their leaders. In other words, when I was sitting down with a doctor in my area just about a month ago that is Hindu, and I said, all of these stories, and the Vedas this is just like one little section of the Vedas. They just go on and on and on. The Bhagavad Gita is really just about Krishna with Arjuna before a battle, okay? And you start to get into these stories, and this man is very intelligent, a doctor, right? And he's president of hospitals, and he works with people, loves people, does his best to help people, okay? But I asked him, do you believe that these stories actually happen? Like what you're reading about and what you hear about, that Krishna was blue, or that Vishnu did this, or Ganesh lost his head and then he had the elephant head replacing him, and all these other gods. they said yes, but not like how we have here, like other universes and other places. And the reason why that is because they know they can't rationally explain and give location, date, and time, and genealogy, and leftover artifact to these kinds of civilizations and these kinds of descriptions of the world in which all of this can possibly take place. It's not really happening. And just even not specifically towards Hinduism, much of what we now know about Hinduism actually came after Christianity had already reached India, and they wanted to start writing down and recording in detail their stories, which I'm not trying to say they didn't have them before Christianity. They can predate them as well, but I do believe Judaism predates their stories as being written and recorded. I think most scholars believe on that as well. But I'm talking about the specific stories that they try to relate to be more beneficial, the ones that are more popular today, were written down after Christianity, especially those like the Bhagavad Gita and Krishna and so forth. And so you're not dealing with the same kind of historicity. Then when you deal with Islam, and you're dealing with Islam and how it looks at all of the Old Testament prophets and some of the New Testament prophets, even calling Jesus a prophet, we're not differing now over whether or not these people were actual, factual people and if miracles can be done. We're just now disagreeing with Muslims over what Revelation teaches us, what miracles were done and what prophets actually did. And so this is where you get into the Islamic dilemma, which the Quran actually affirms our books, the Injil, the Torah, the Zabar, and it actually affirms our prophets. And yet, when you read the writings of our prophets in those books, the Torah and the Injil and so forth, you see it contradicts the Quran. So if the Quran is right, that the Injil, the Torah, those books that came before it confirm what Islam is, it is now wrong by stating that because those books actually contradict it. But then as modern Muslims have found that problem to be such an issue, they have now said, well, the Quran is actually affirming a different Injil, a different Torah, which, by the way, the Quran comes in the late 600s. We have manuscripts of the Torah and the Injil much before that. And of course, at the contemporary time of Muhammad. So then now if the modern day Muslim is right and saying that the Quran is not really affirming the books that the Christians and Jews have because it's been corrupted, well, then the Quran is wrong, because the Quran can only be speaking about the kind of Torah and the kind of Injil gospel that the Christians actually factually had in history. So if the Quran is right, Islam is wrong. If the Quran is wrong, Islam is wrong. You know, that's the dilemma. You can learn more about that with David Wood on his channel and others like him, and Brother Avery on God Logic, his channel. But notice this, my friends. What she is trying to explain to him is that Christianity is different, that it hits different, that it gives rise to things like science and evidentialism, but it's not based in it because God created what we would then call the universe and evidence and all of these things. God is greater than that. And so in other words, like how science is the language of how we speak one to another about things we see in nature, God, by his spirit and revelation, is the language God speaks to our soul. And that's why I was trying to explain it and compare it to like marriage and family. One person said it like this, I believe it was a Jewish person. I think it was even like Jerry Seinfeld or something, that God purposely takes away the feeling of longing of children from those who have never had them, because it would be unbearable for them to know that they're missing something they don't have. So think about that. Once he became a parent, this person, I believe is Jerry Seinfeld, became a parent, he began to realize just how valuable children were in his life, and that he had never experienced the missing of children, because when he didn't have them, he never thought about it that way. So when you try to talk to somebody about what it means to be a parent, and you can think about like how some people these days don't want to be a parent and so forth, you know, and I know God can call some to be like that, but just hear my example here. They don't even know what they're missing because they've never had that little baby stare back at them fresh out of the womb and then develop that nurturing and loving relationship for the next years of its life. There's nothing like it. And those are the kinds of things, those things which I would say are the deepest meanings to our lives, is what God's communication to us is actually like. That's what I believe. Just a few more comments here, and then we'll get into it. Yeah, archaeology too. Archaeology is continuing to discover our characters and dates and places. And every time they say there's not enough or this is a discrepancy, you give it some time and the explanation sides on Christianity. And you can study that about the Hittite people. When this was first kicking off, the Bible spoke about the Hittite people and they should be there. We found no artifacts and people mocked us. And then later on, we found that the Hittite people did exist where the Bible said they were. And yet it was one of the only witnesses until we found these other things. And so we're not trying to argue from silence like Mormons are, trying to say all of this existed as civilizations. No, we're saying there will always be some silence or some things lacking in archaeology. They haven't found the chariots yet in the Red Sea and stuff like that. But what we have found are evidences of the Jewish people's migration, and great work has been being done on this, on the Exodus, and also just recently on Sodom and Gomorrah, just as of recent, the way that they have found what they believe was Sodom and Gomorrah and how it was destroyed. What the secular historians are now even saying would have been something like an asteroid or something that would be hot coming down upon it and then crushing it and burning it. And I'm telling you, you can look those things up from noted scientists, not just people who are trying to be conspiracists. I got that same Quran. Wonderful. Yeah, this is the Yusuf Ali version. A friend of mine gave it to me. To try to convert me, I agreed to read it with him, basically a Bible study, but using the Quran, the book is so flawed and evil. Christianity definitely stands apart from that. Amen. I mean, that's just honest truth. Anytime you study the Bible compared to the Quran, there's nothing like it. And that's why if you ever want to do that again, I recommend getting the Critical Quran by Robert Spencer, who goes into details to explain things about the Quran that generally your Muslim will not explain, your Muslim friend will not explain. And he will bring out the hadiths, which are like their commentaries. And then as well as Usama Dakdok from Egypt, who speaks Arabic and writes in Arabic, actually did a various series on the Quran and translated it and wrote commentary on it. And those are the kinds of things that they don't want you to know. So he has the Quran called the Glorious Quran, and he translated it. And it is done so good. It gives you so much insight. So if that ever comes up to you, I think you will really enjoy it. Okay, so funny. I got a stack of books now almost as high as my head. Okay, let's get back into this. Feel free to comment as we go through it.
So you believe in some kind of higher power, which is comforting you, and you're obviously reacting from an Islamic past, and I know that from what you've written, that part of what you feel is that Christianity is a bulwark against Islam, which is a quite separate thing from what you've been now saying, but you stand by that. I mean, that's part of what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And I accept that, and I support that. That's why I've called you a political Christian. But from what you've just said, it sounds as though you're more than just a political Christian. I mean, it sounds as though you actually believe it.
Just want to interrupt real quick. Notice that he even agrees that Christianity is better than Islam. Sam Harris and other atheists have been saying this. Apostate Prophet, a former Muslim, has been saying this. They are not the same. Christianity holds back Islam. A lot of the Crusades was holding back Islam, and Christianity gets a bad name because it's often compared to Islam, and it is not the same. So I'm thankful that he at least recognizes that. But as you can see, he has a problem with her now being into the details of Christianity. It seems like he's even willing to give her a pass on a higher power, which I believe that if any atheist is going to be true to what they do as a scientist and anything else like that, they should at least be deist, not even agnostic. They should at least be deist, believing that some intelligence has created them, and they should leave it at that. So I'm happy that he at least gives her credit to understand that Christianity is better than Islam, and that cultural Christianity is better than cultural Islam. But here he's going to critique her beliefs.
So what is your response to those specific questions of Richard? When the vicar is saying that Jesus is the Son of God, literally, not figuratively, how do you square that with your highly trained rational mind?
Well, it is, again, different planes of perception. So I choose to accept Jesus Christ, the teachings of Jesus Christ, the story of Jesus Christ. I choose to accept that. So on the personal level, the rewards I get, very subjective again, but mine and through choice, which is separate from where I think that, aside from my personal experience, the history of Western civilization is mainly Christian, and that the external forces, for instance, the spread of Islam, non-violently or violently, and the challenge of Islam and the message of Islam to Western civilization can be countered and should be countered with the message of Western civilization, which is essentially Christian. And in that sense, I think there are more people who agree with me, but that is on the societal level. And then on the civilizational level, I think that every moral, you've used yourself, Richard, the phrase lately that there is moral Christianity and there is cultural Christianity. And when moral and cultural Christianity collides with moral and cultural Islam, or moral and cultural Confucianism, or cultural authoritarianism, I think that perhaps we're on the same page about that might be a way of countering it.
Yes.
But on the personal level, yes, I choose to believe in God. And I think there we might say, let's agree to disagree.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay, so she brought up the two planes, and then she also brought up the benefit of Christianity. So let me do this and this. And what I'll do here is I'm just going to show you that I have the book, just so you can understand that I'm not just saying this because she said it or somebody else said it. I've done the reading. Obviously, I don't read every book that I have in these libraries and all over my Kindles, page by page. Well, I shouldn't say obviously. I guess some people do, but I am just not able to do that. I look at them like resources, and I try to delve as much as I can into them. And so I just want you to see here in Tom Holland's book on Dominion, he's an atheist. He was once a Christian. Now he's an atheist. And he basically says how Christianity, how the Christian Revolution remade the world, okay? A galloping tour of Christianity's influence over the last 2,000 years. Now, what I'm going to do just to simplify this is I'm just going to bring up chat GPT to help right here to show you all of the things that Ayaan is mentioning from someone like a historian like Tom Holland that comes out clearly in not only just people of faith, but people who are going to be honest and say, yes, Christianity did these kinds of things. Even the deists, even the non-Christians of the American Revolution and so forth understood what Christianity and the beliefs of Christians did for them in the Enlightenment, in the secular worldview. It helped them so much. So list 10 things Holland states in his book that Christianity did for society. Just to show it there, so we don't have to read through the whole book. And I didn't have this prepared ahead of time. I just want you to see it list out. Hospitals, charities, okay, foundation of universities, abolition of slavery. Slavery still exists in many parts of the Islamic world, even right now. Okay, promotion of human rights, advocacy for human rights, education for all. That's a Christian value that came a lot from the missionaries. Influence on Western society, influence on Western law, rather. And you can see inspiring philosophy has been going into detail with this because people are now trying to challenge atheists. One atheist is trying to challenge Tom Holland's book, who's also an atheist, saying, hey, man, you're just kissing up to the Christians too much. And inspiring philosophy just totally demolishes the low scholarship of the atheist challenging Tom Holland. Tom Holland is standing on true scholarship. Care for environment, inspiration for art and culture, revolution and ethics and morality. And then watch this here. What studies currently have shown that Protestant Christianity has positively impacted Central and South America? These are some of the newest studies that are coming out right now that are showing that Christianity is impacting societies that were even Christian in one sense by being Catholic, but Protestantism specifically not having to adhere to a set of dogma, but being willing to learn, like how we do from Scripture, learning from our mistakes. That's what Protestantism actually does. It's a reforming movement, and they put that into their mindset of learning. Look at these studies that have been coming out, okay? These studies have been coming out that Protestant Christianity has been doing all of these things. And what's funny here is it's actually being reported by the Catholics because they see in what's happening as it's becoming where the more Protestant, where it used to be Catholic. Cite the actual papers. Cite the actual paper, because I've seen these before, and I'm just going to have them here for you. National Catholic Reporter, the Christian Post. These are actually just magazines. These are articles. I'm going to put peer-reviewed articles. That's what I'm looking for. These peer-reviewed articles on Protestantism. Here we go. It's going to start listing them out. Yes, El Salvador was the one that I was looking at. This was done by Cambridge. Let me just click on that while we're waiting for it right here, the rest of them. Just so you can see, it's not only just something of the past that Christianity has done, it's also what Christianity is doing. Changing landscapes of faith, Latin America's religions in the 21st century. And it talks about, I believe here, how it's making a positive difference. Here's another one. Yeah, where there's more civil engagement, there's more economic impact. I believe that's just from the same article. So you can look those up at your own time. So it's not only just what we did in the past, it's also what we're doing now. So once again, what is Dawkins going to try to do? He's going to try to push on our actual beliefs of faith. And as she is saying, there are two tiers or two realms or two ways of understanding things. Keep remembering that example that I gave of trying to find a diamond with a metal detector. Remember, diamonds are more valuable than metal detectors. And yet people are going to try to say, if I can't find something with a metal detector, then it's not real. No, you are supposed to realize there are things that are even more valuable than metal detectors, and they're more real in that sense, more valuable. And yet you don't find them with metal detectors such as diamonds. Let's keep going here.
I didn't hear that.
She's saying, let's agree to disagree on the details. I mean,
It's more than just details. I mean, okay. I want to say two different things. Let's take the moral thing first. Islam is a nasty religion. I think we agree about that. But Christianity is not all that nice either. And when you think about Christianity, Christianity is obsessed with sin. St. Augustine.
Just notice this. When I say he goes into a moral argument, what right does he have to go into a moral argument according to the doctrines of atheism? He has none. But now he's going to say, okay, yes, I'm making a value statement that Christianity is better than atheism, but now I don't think Christianity is that good. Well, what are you putting on the other side of the scale? What are you using to make your value statements? If I say McDonald's hamburgers are not good hamburgers, what am I comparing it to? What is my standard to compare McDonald's hamburgers to? Five Guys? Shake Shack? What am I comparing it to? When he's saying that Christianity may be better than Islam because you're comparing those two, now when he says Christianity is not good, what are you comparing it to? Are you just comparing it to some chemical in your brain that just got you to say this because you don't even believe you have free will? And even out of his own words, he says that the whole world itself is blind and pitiless, that there is no mercy, there is no good, there is no evil. It's just blind and pitiless indifference. And so now he's going to try to make an moral argument. Do you notice the changing of categories here? Do you notice the non sequitur, as the philosopher says? It doesn't follow. She is talking about the basis for all existence coming through God, and then God revealing himself through Christianity. And now he wants to attack Christianity when he has no ground to stand on. Dawkins, before you even go to Christianity, give me the grounds of existence and how you can choose between religions. I can choose between religions because I believe there's a God that makes me with a brain that has capacity to function with my soul to understand things. How do you explain you understanding anything? How do you explain knowing the difference between good and evil? He can't, not in his worldview. So you notice he's hypocritical. You're not like he's a bad person any worse than anybody else that has sinned. I'm just saying he's hypocritical in the sense of he's using a standard that he himself denies.
Said that we all inherit the sin of Adam. Well, of course he didn't exist, but so we inherit original sin. Original sin came down in the semen. Jesus was not conceived with semen. That's why he's clear of sin. His mother Mary had to be clear of sin as well, so she had to have an immaculate conception. This is all obvious nonsense. This is all theological bullshit. And the idea that humanity is born in sin and has to be cured of sin by Jesus being crucified, Jesus being punished for all our sins, and that is a morally very unpleasant idea. I'm sure you must agree about that.
I find that Christianity is actually obsessed with love, and that the teachings of...
If you're not making $158,000 per year, but you'd like to...
The teaching of Christ, as I see it, and again, I'm a brand new Christian, but what I'm finding out, which is the opposite of growing up as a Muslim, the message of Islam, but the message of Christianity I get is that it's a message of love, it's a message of redemption, and it's a story of renewal and rebirth. And so Jesus dying and rising again, for me, symbolizes that story. And in a small way, I felt like I had died and I was reborn. And that story of redemption and rebirth, I think makes Christianity actually a very, very powerful story for the human condition and human existence, and the pain of suffering, but also our internal the recognition of what you call sin, but perhaps the character defects, that both good and evil are there, but that both good and evil are in us. I think those teachings in Christianity are far more powerful and have led to, I think, the flourishing of Western civilization compared to, say, growing up as a Muslim, when I was taught that really the only way for you to be faithful is to fear, naked fear, and to have these sets of obligations which you basically obey. And that was very much about it was centered around hellfire and all of these other things. And so Christianity, as I experienced, I'll give you an example. When I was an atheist and I was going all over both the United States and all over Europe, mocking Christians, making fun of them, making fun of faith, as you're doing now, dear Richard, I was walking with 6 to 7 men at any given time, protecting me armed from things that I said that were offensive to Muslims, or Muslims thought were offensive to them. Christians were writing me letters saying, you know, we're going to pray for you, you're misguided. And I think that alone defines for me the distinction between Christianity in general, mainstream Christianity and mainstream Islam.
Well, I must say, I've never met a vicar that I didn't like. I mean, they're always very, very nice people.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, the stuff they believe is obvious nonsense. And you have to take the whole package, because I mean, you talked about Jesus rising from the dead. You don't believe Jesus rose from the dead, surely?
I choose to believe that Jesus rose from the dead.
You choose to believe it?
Yes, and that is a matter of choice. And it's a matter, I think it has to go back to, is there something or is there nothing? And I think you start with, there is nothing. And yes, for years I agreed with you, there's nothing. But if you come around to the idea that there might be something much more powerful than we are, something that caused everything else, then something like Jesus rising out of the dead, or these other miracles, Jesus being born out of a virgin, for that higher power is not a big deal. But again, it's a matter of choice, and it is just different planes of perception. And I think here on this plane of perception, having been a former atheist, I don't think this is something we're going to resolve tonight or agree on right now. Well, and so that is where I think it's perhaps more interesting, even if you choose not to believe, to say, let's at least talk about the value of Christianity for today. For I look at these universities, the most illustrious universities of the West, and you've all shared with me images of young women draped in kefirs, the symbol of Hamas, performing the Muslim prayer. And tell me if those kids are not morally and utterly lost. And Queers for Palestine. So while you and I and Stephen Pinker and all of those wonderful people were locked up in our ivory towers, let's ask ourselves what was happening on the ground, because in the last 6 decades, we pretty much demonized Christianity and the teachings of Christianity out of the public space, out of school, out of universities, and a vacuum occurred. And that vacuum is now being filled, as G.K. Chesterton said, not because people have come to reason, but because now they'll believe in anything. There are very awful forces today out there that are claiming the hearts and minds and souls of these young students. And when you say there is nothing, you offer them nothing.
We're getting into the bigger political, cultural.
All right. So this is the time now. If you want to come up, let me know. I'll give you the link. I'm going to share here. So much to be said there. I think, I mean, so much she said there, but I think that we've gone over that, right? Like, I think I've said that multiple different ways. She just kind of repeats herself. If you believe in something, as theists do, as deists should be honest enough to do, as all people should be, at least a deist, after you believe in something rather than nothing, believing that that something is intelligent, can intervene and come in human history is not that big of a deal. It's not hard. Let's just be honest. We all can do it. And even when we talk about like myths and fiction, and some of the best fictional writers have been Christians, using myth to tell the true myth, the true story of good and evil based in the Bible and so forth. What is really even fiction? We don't like fiction because it's illogical. We like fiction because there's a logic that's based in it that we can understand, and it expands our minds to thoughts and concepts that we already believe in. That's why it's like when you're watching Star Trek, you're not watching squares become circles. You're not watching bachelors be married at the same time, like in violations of laws of non-contradiction. You're just watching somebody go through the human experience, an experience of emotions and feelings in another place in a different planet. And all that we do when we create aliens and alien worlds is just, we're just creating different expressions of those same things that we deal with in our soul. So even when he just kind of mocks it and thinks it's nothing but mythology and all of that, what is the actual point of mythology? Why are the biggest blockbusters always based on these kinds of stories of good versus evil, whether it's Star Wars, Star Trek, or Marvel? I mean, once again, this is the image of God crying out. We're reaching out into the night for something more. And there is something more, and he feels it, and he even believes that it's better than Islam. But once again, where does he get those value statements from? Where he gets those value statements from his conscience that comes from God, not merely molecules and motions. He's more than just a brain. He's a soul utilizing his brain. And once again, this is what he said in his book, River Out of Eden. Just having the chat help me out here, just so I could get his quote. The universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. DNA neither knows nor cares. DNA just is, and that's what he's wearing on his tie there. And we dance to its music. Well, once again, if this is true, then what is his point of even having this discussion? It's all pointless anyway. What is he gaining from all this? Ali's just dancing to her DNA, and so is the rapist, and so is the Muslim, and so forth and so on. But you notice that that's how they have to speak. That atheists that take the position that he does, like Dawkins does, they have to speak hypocritically, because it's impossible for them to hold on to their worldview while at the same time attacking Christianity and beliefs that are based in God. It's impossible. It's like sawing off the branch that they're sitting on. And I know so often that Christians get a bad reputation for just being merely people of faith, being merely people of belief, and then we're compared to, the people who wore Nikes and killed themselves trying to catch Halley's Comet or something, or we're compared to David Koresh's. So then they take these most extreme examples of cult-like belief and then say that's what Christians are like. Of course, anybody is capable of doing any of those stupid things. There's people who do that for their atheistic regimes. There's people who did that for the emperor of Japan. There's people who did that for communism. There's people who did that for Lenin, right? You just believe anything, you go about your life and ignore everything else. But that really is not the story of Christianity. Christianity is the story of people learning how to understand who God is and who they are, knowing God and knowing themselves. I mean, start from Adam and Eve, that fall that he's mocking. Oh, we didn't come from them. But now that they recognize there's a mitochondrial Eve, right? Now they recognize that there had to be a start of the human race at some point, right? And that we're all ancestors of one race, the human race, and that there's not really what used to be taught in eugenics and other different racic, belief systems like what Hitler adopted and so forth, that there's different kinds of humans, and therefore the stronger need to survive and help that process. Now he's kind of adopting that we're all of one race, that we're all of one people group. And yet he has no reason to, in his own scientific belief, to explain how in the world the first living organism started, let alone the first human person. And that's where you can look at Dr. James Tour's work. He's a chemist, and he's calling all of these origin of life specialists to task, saying, you're acting like we've explained the origin of life, and we really haven't. And he's not saying that they can't or they won't, but you're taking it on faith, and you're believing in the science of the gaps of these things. And you have all of these gaps in your belief of not only just non-living things becoming living things, Dr. James Stewart talks about, but you also have all of these gaps in the different species from one to another. Whereas, excuse me, during the time of Darwin, he thought that it would be really easy to explain cell mutation and all of these things on these levels because we would just understand it better as time went on. Now we look at the complexity of the cell. We look at the complexity of DNA. We look at the complexity of all these things. It's actually not getting easier. It's getting harder to explain those things. And so I just want to encourage you, especially if you're a Christian, stand true in your faith. Be encouraged by Ali's, testimony there. She didn't have to fight him in the evidential realm. She could stand on her subjective testimony because she had the objective truth of God being something rather than nothing. And then Christianity goes through the rest of those steps to explain it in a way that I believe satisfies our curiosity and gives us the objective truth of God in the virgin birth and those different things. I believe it is objectively true. I don't just believe it because it feels good. I believe it's actually true. And it makes the best sense of all the data that we have, especially Jesus. Like if you just start with Jesus and understand his life and where he came from and what happened while he was here, I think a lot of those things come into place, the virgin birth, the death, burial, and resurrection. And obviously that changes everything if that's true. So then you look back at his life and what he taught. And he taught that Moses was real. He taught that Noah was real. And he taught that these stories were actually a part of our history. So I know there's a lot right there. And there's many books that I can continue to recommend, like Gary Habermas on Jesus and his resurrection and things like that. But remember, the atheist who's just going to flat out deny this is not now really looking for evidence. What they're really looking for is 100% certainty. but they don't have that in anything, and yet they're asking that from us as Christians. And so that's why I believe starting with atheists on their existence, on their presuppositions, because then when you start there and you can get them to get past nothing and to something, then they can decide how true the belief is in X, Y, and Z. You know, for me, I take the core fundamental truths as God as that he taught in his word about God, you know, his nature, Jesus, and so forth. I take that at the highest level. And then there's other things that I'm not sure about, like even like how he said original sin with Adam coming through the doctrines of Augustine. There are multiple church fathers that had different views on how sin came into humanity, that it doesn't necessarily come at birth, that it simply comes through a fallen nature, and then man chooses sin individually over time in their own nature. Like, it doesn't necessarily even have to be the Augustinian model of original sin. And that's why when I talk with the people who are like this, I like to remind them, why are we doing Bible studies over things that Christians disagree with? Some Christians are theistic evolutionists. Francis Collins, who was a leader of the genome code, mapping the gene code. Francis Collins, who worked for United States Health Department, okay? He's wrote about how he's a theistic evolutionist, and he has the organization that he started, BioLogos, okay? And I'll put some of these resources up here. Do I agree with, theistic evolution? No, but he's still a Christian. In other words, being a Christian doesn't mean we all have to believe everything the exact same way, because we're going to have different levels of certainty. So BioLogos started by Francis Collins right here, you know, and as I said, he worked there on the mapping the human gene code with the National Institute of Health, right? And he was on the Human Gene Project. Okay, I would rather Richard Dawkins believe in God as an atheist and be a Christian as Francis Collins is than to be the kind of foolish person he is now. Because the Bible says the fool has said in their heart they don't believe in God, right? There is no God. Like be Francis Collins, bro. At least understand that if there's something and we didn't come from nothing, we came from God, and he used evolution, that's even more evidence to God's grand design. If he could have it be self-replicating and be passed along in millions and billions of years and not end in heat death and not end in a black hole, that's another evidence for God. So that's the way I kind of look at it, even though I am a young earth creationist. And then, as I was mentioning before, just some of the things that where Dawkins, he's making fun of, oh, you actually believe in an atom, which now they understand mitochondrial Eve, like I was mentioning before. But notice that if you don't believe in this kind of common descent, you will turn into an actual racist, which is one of, because he's wearing the DNA helix there, right? One of the discoverers of the DNA helix turned racist. This gentleman actually, and his name was James Watson, okay? James Watson has a remarkable long history of sexist, racist public comments. And what he basically believed, and let me just get chat to summarize this. Chat really helps me out once you know where you're going, right? Summarize how he was racist. What research or data did he consider? And I'll put that there. And it's going to show you that he didn't believe that we all had a common descent, and that there's different, or even if we did, that there's different variations to the point that within humanity you can consider, like how you would consider different variations of dogs and one being greater and lesser. He believed that you could do the same thing with humanity, that it wasn't like one kind of human on the earth right now. Like, that wasn't what he believed. And he used the data that he got from the DNA. Now look at this right here. I don't want to just, okay, Watson's comments. What did he actually believe, and what proof did he give for racism? Because I've read this before, I want you guys to see this, of what he actually gave, because it's not just a Christian trying to make evolutionists look bad. It's in their own words, okay? James Watson, a co-discoverer of the DNA double helix, had all of these controversial things. Now look at, in 2007, he suggested that people of the African descent are genetically less intelligent than those of European descent. He claimed there was scientific evidence to support this idea, citing intelligent testing. So he's using these same kinds of metrics that evolutionists try to use to make their points. He's using them. And then he made his claims. Now, they're going to say it wasn't based on concrete proof, and people have disproved it. But just think about this. Even if today there aren't technically different races or different levels of intelligences among humans, at some point, even in the atheistic paradigm, there had to be. In other words, there had to be people like Neanderthals. Neanderthals. I can't even say that. What is the Neanderthals? Why can't I say that now? I can't even pronounce the name right now. For some reason, you know, when you can see it, I can't even. Neanderthals. I gotta Neanderthals. Isn't that funny? I also can't really spell very good. If you've noticed, I'm gonna have this pronounce it for me. Pronounce right here. Neanderthals. There we go. I was missing one vowel. Neanderthals. Okay. Now, even according to evolutionists, at some point, there's probably going to be a crossover of Neanderthals, of certain versions of humans as you look at human evolution, human evolutionary chart, right? As you look at this chart, these are going to cross over at different times, right? Well, how do we not know that we're not crossing over at that point right now? How do we not know we don't see one starting to pull away while one gets, stuck in its own gene pool, but one is starting to pull away? So just like there were in times past, more or less intelligent humans, or human-like, creatures, how do we not know in the future there also will not be this continuation? Because we just kind of stop it right here and go, well, here we are. Well, if you lived at the time of these folks, there's going to be a difference in intelligence between these two folks, right? These two guys here, right? Now, how do we not know that there's not another one coming after that, right? So that's my point, is that he mocks, he mocks Adam and Eve. He mocks these kinds of beliefs, and yet he doesn't even understand what he is mocking and how he has to be dependent upon what we believe even today. He has to be dependent, otherwise he's just going to be a racist. He has to be dependent upon the belief that somehow we're all equal right now, that right now, as they used to have humans use with Aborigines and so forth, but right now, there's no different kind of human species on the planet. Right now, there isn't, but there will be maybe in one day, and someone in our future, they're going to find that, and they're going to have to deal with that, right? And in the past, there was, but right now, there's not. But yet he wants to mock that. In Christians that say one race, the human race, that God specially created Adam and Eve to procreate the human race. And yet, once again, like I mentioned with James Tour, they have no evidence. They have no evidence for how life started. Look, I'll just put it here in chat as well. Just putting it right back up here. Is just talk about concrete evidence. Is there concrete evidence or scientific support to how life started from non-living things? Nope. See, look at this. All we have is a few experiments that haven't taken us far enough. While there is no concrete evidence of exactly how life arose, there is substantial scientific support for various stages and mechanisms. So what is he doing right now? They say we have a God of the gaps. We say they have a science of the gaps. And once again, James Tour, who works with this, is not even saying we won't be able to maybe fill in more gaps. But he is saying, as of right now, everybody who's mocking Christians that believe in special creation, just listen to that, special creation, that God did something special here, that they are to be taken serious, because we still, even after the 1950s, haven't gone beyond this. Now, notice this. This was the best experiment that they had, that if they had all of these kind of conditions, all of these kinds of things, and they could do all of this, remember, with all of their intelligence, that somehow they could show how they could produce amino acids and so forth. That, since the 1950s, has really not expanded to anything close to what we would need to have life. As a matter of fact, all of the things they took for granted and the steps in between are now all being exposed. Let's put it right here. Since the 1950s experiment, how many new gaps concerning non-life to life need to be filled. Specifically, new gaps. Look at this. New gaps that need to be filled. Look at this. They are still trying to do this. Look, formation of complex biomolecules. Researchers are now focusing on these things like RNA and how they can do it. However, forming long chains of RNA or proteins in the chaotic prebiotic environment has a significant gap. So notice what I'm asking here. It just goes on and on and on. I'm not trying to be a scientist. That's not what I do. I just study it, right? And I'm just sharing these things with you. So notice how he mocks what he is taking by faith. And we are simply saying, God knows, God did it, and we're here now, and we need to take serious not only the science of the human nature, but we also need to take serious the soul of the human nature. So hopefully that encouraged some of you today. I was trying to keep it under an hour, but I went over. I know, thank you. Neanderthals. Isn't that crazy, man? I have a doctorate degree. I've written over 20 books myself, and I get paid to speak for a living and read for a living and write for a living. And yet sometimes I can't even say a word. Sometimes I can't even spell certain, like the most simplest words. I remember I was with my kids the other day, and I don't even know what the word was, but it was like so simple. And I was like, asked my 12-year-old son, how do you spell this? I just say, brain just... two molecules collided or something. I know. Thank you for helping me with that. All right. Anybody want to join? I don't see anybody in the lobby. That's okay. This is what I believe. Thank you for joining with us. I want to know what you believe. Let us know below. God bless you and have a great day.
Never lacking, slacking, overreacting when I be coming with my reaction. What do you